Adam and I had been seeing each other behind everyone's backs. At some point, he got a taste of what we had, and it was never enough. Then, right in front of my actual boyfriend, he looked me in the eye and asked, "How much longer are you going to keep me hidden?" Chapter 1. On my 22nd birthday, just as the party was winding down, Adam grabbed my wrist and pulled me into the emergency stairwell. His eyes were hazy with alcohol, fixed on my lips. "Miriam, I've got a birthday present for you." Before I could respond, he lowered his head and kissed me. The strong scent of alcohol, laced with a hint of mint, washed over me. Before I realized it, I'd closed my eyes. Maybe he hadn't expected me to kiss him back. He paused, resting his forehead against mine, our noses brushing. "So, you like this?" I tilted my head up and kissed him first, leaning against the stair rail. He watched me with an amused smile. "Got the guts to come with me? What about your girlfriend?" I secretly dug my nails into my palm, trying to force myself back to my senses. Adam was the reckless, dangerously charming type, the kind of guy who always got what he wanted. Wild, ruthless, impossible to tie down. I'd known for a long time that men like him were trouble, hard to get close to, but that's exactly what made them irresistible. He let out a low laugh, narrowing his eyes. "Isn't she in your boyfriend's room right now? Do you really not know? Or are you pretending?" My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly hid it behind a calm expression. I already knew my boyfriend had cheated on me. What I didn't know was that he'd sunk so low as to sleep with his own best friend's girlfriend. Adam turned away, pulled a cigarette from his pocket, and lit it. Gray-white smoke drifted from his lips, veiling most of his face. The glowing ember flickered in the darkness, reflected in his black eyes like the brightest star at the edge of the night sky. "So," he finished the cigarette, his voice now lower and rougher, carrying an almost hypnotic pull in the quiet night. "Coming with me?" I stepped closer and met his glossy gaze. "Do you even know what you're doing?" He reached up and gently cupped my cheek. "Of course I do. We both win. Don't we? Don't you want to get back at your boyfriend?" My boyfriend had been his best friend since childhood. That best friend had slept with Adam's girl. So now, Adam had come for me. Fight fire with fire. I liked the idea, wrapping my arms around his waist. I gave him a hard pinch. "Let's go." Chapter 2. I never expected Adam to take me straight back to his place. "Can't we just get a hotel?" I asked, tugging at his sleeve. He glanced around the room before saying, "Unless you're willing to help me change the sheets." We sat in the living room for a full hour, locked in a silent standoff. Then Adam suddenly slammed the vase off the table with a curse. "This is pointless," he muttered under his breath. "Screw it. Go back to your Zach." Zach was my boyfriend. We'd been high school classmates. We started dating after the college entrance exams. We went to different universities, but they were in the same city. Back then, he treated me incredibly well. He always gave in to me, no matter what. I was stubborn and competitive. He was always the one willing to compromise. During the second semester of our junior year, he entered a startup competition and threw himself into it day and night. He earned plenty of praise. I admired him even more. To make it easier to take care of him, I agreed to move in together. Back then, we were young and inexperienced, clumsily learning how to build a home together, letting everyday life bring us closer. Our friends all said we'd end up together. I believed it too. So when had everything changed? A dull ache spread through my chest, as if countless needles were piercing my heart. I walked over, crouched in front of Adam, and gently took his hand. "Adam, what if I made the first move? Would that make things more interesting?" The next morning, I woke up in Adam's arms. We hadn't slept in the bedroom. Instead, we'd spent the night squeezed together on a narrow couch, our bodies tangled together like two vines growing around each other. Watching his peaceful sleeping face, I felt like a thief. I secretly reached out, tracing the lines of his face with my fingertips. When I reached his lips, my touch became especially gentle. A phone suddenly rang. I quickly pulled my hand back and forced a casual smile. "You're awake?" Without fully opening his eyes, Adam gave a quiet hum. "Answer it." I picked up my phone. It was that jerk, Zach. Last night, he claimed he had an urgent work emergency and had to rush back to the office. "Yeah, Right. Who knew which hotel he'd actually been working in? At least he probably wasn't as bold as Adam. No way he'd dare bring another woman home. Hello? After checking in on me for a moment, Zach suddenly sounded a little aggrieved. Why didn't you call me last night? Are you upset that I left early? I almost laughed. Did he really want me calling to interrupt whatever he was doing? I didn't want to bother you. When are you coming back? Not today. I've still got to work overtime. Take care of yourself, okay? I turned to look at Adam. After a few seconds, I smiled. Okay, don't worry. Focus on work. After I hung up, Adam sat up on the couch and stretched lazily. Last night wore me out. Want to grab a good meal together and recharge? I checked my schedule and sighed. I've got meetings all day. Maybe after 10 tonight. He let out a dry laugh. No wonder your boyfriend cheated on you. I shot back without missing a beat. And you're one to talk? Didn't your girlfriend run off with someone else too? Before I left, Adam wrapped his arms around me from behind. Through the thin fabric of my clothes, I could clearly feel the steady beat of his heart against my back. So, when are you dumping him? And how are you going to do it? I stared into space for a long moment before answering. I never said I was going to break up with him. Chapter 3. After going home to shower, I drove to the office. Just my luck. On the way, I spotted Zach with Adam's girlfriend. They had just walked out of a hotel and were kissing goodbye by the roadside, completely reluctant to part. Disgusting. I don't know if Zach noticed my car, but he suddenly shoved the woman away and stepped aside. I didn't stop. I just kept driving. A moment later, Zach called. His voice was tense, though he tried hard to hide it. Hey, babe, have you had breakfast yet? Not yet. I'm driving. Why? Want to grab breakfast together? I can swing by your office. I answered casually as I drove. He seemed to relax. Just focus on driving. Don't come over. It's too much trouble. I ordered breakfast to your office. So make sure you eat. You're so sweet. Of course, I'm your husband, aren't I? Disgusting. I almost threw up. At 9:50 that night, I finally finished organizing my schedule. Stretching. I picked up my phone. Zach had called once and sent 3 half-hearted messages. Replying was optional. Adam, on the other hand, had sent 6. Lunch? Done yet? Dinner tonight? Seriously? How are you too busy to even have an affair properly? The last message had arrived 3 minutes earlier. I'm downstairs. Come down when you're done. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally typing one word. Okay. Chapter 4. Adam and I had just finished making out in his car when Zach suddenly video called me. The phone startled me so badly I almost landed on Adam's leg. After straightening my clothes, I got out of the car and answered. Babe, why is your face so red? Are you getting sick? Zach asked worriedly. I touched my cheek. Probably the wind. I'm fine. He frowned thoughtfully. My heart skipped a beat. For a second, I thought he'd noticed something. Then he said, maybe you're catching a cold. Even your voice sounds hoarse. How observant. He told me he'd finished work early and was heading home to keep me company, asking me to get back soon too. After I got back into the car, I told Adam, leaning back in his seat with an amused smile. He said, can't you just work late for once? I shook my head. No. When I got home, Zach was sitting on the couch watching TV, looking more refreshed than ever. Guess happiness really did brighten a person's mood. You're home, honey. Hearing the door, he hurried over to take my bag. The moment he got close, he froze. Why do you smell so strongly of cigarettes? Because your best friend had one after we fooled around. I answered him silently in my head before speaking aloud. I've been stressed lately. If you don't like it, I'll quit. Zach pulled me into a hug. Honey, quit your job. I'll take care of you. I stood stiffly in his arms, unable to move, nausea rising in my chest. When I didn't answer, he held me even tighter. Honey, am I just not capable enough? I dug my nails into my palm and forced myself to speak gently. I just don't want you working so hard. Zach, I'm exhausted. I want to take a shower and get some rest. After my shower, I worked for a while longer. Then Zach suddenly wrapped his arms around me from behind. Instinctively, I pushed him away. He looked confused. Honey, why have you suddenly become so distant? Suddenly? Hadn't we always been like this? He buried himself in his phone. I buried myself in work. We could spend an entire evening in the same room without exchanging a single word. And even when we forced a conversation, it usually died within a few sentences because we had nothing left to talk about. What's this? Zach suddenly brushed my hair aside and pointed at the right side of my neck. Why are there red marks here? Almost instantly, the image of Adam with his face buried against my neck flashed through my mind, along with his low, husky voice. My body's running hot. They're just heat rashes. I glanced at the mark in the mirror and answered calmly. Zach didn't question it further. He simply asked one more time if I wanted to be intimate. After I turned him down, he settled into bed without a second thought and started scrolling through his phone. Looking at him, I suddenly understood. His sudden tenderness wasn't love. It was guilt. Too bad. I'd already healed my own wounds. With his best friend. Chapter 5. Adam's bar was celebrating its 3rd anniversary, and Zach and I were invited. When we arrived, Adam was still busy, so his girlfriend, Nora, greeted us instead, the same woman Zach had been cheating with. Looking at her sweet, innocent face, it was hard to believe she'd had the nerve to cheat on Adam. Miriam, it's been forever. Your makeup keeps getting better and better. Nora linked her arm through mine, then secretly winked at Zach. I saw it. I pretended I didn't. Your no makeup look is pretty impressive too. Those false lashes look incredibly natural. Nora pursed her lips, smiling even more sweetly. My eyelashes are naturally long. Oh, really? Sure. Next you'll tell me you don't even grow leg hair. After we made our way into the private room, Zach and Nora joined everyone else in a game of dice while I quietly sat beside Zach and watched. A few minutes later, Adam walked in carrying a limited edition LV handbag, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Just as everyone was saying how lucky Nora was, Adam stopped in front of me and handed me the bag. Zach, I managed to get that limited edition bag you asked me to buy. This is for Miriam, right? Zach froze for a split second before forcing a smile. Of course, if I wasn't giving it to my wife, who else would I give it to? Amid everyone's cheering, I reached out and accepted the bag. I knew exactly what time it was. Time to put on a performance. I turned away and pretended to wipe tears from my eyes before facing Zach again with an affectionate smile. Zach, you left early on my birthday, and I really was disappointed. But I also knew you were working hard for your career, for our future. That's why I never blamed you. I never expected you to make it up to me with such an amazing gift today. I'm really touched. You really do cherish me. I know that. Thank you, honey. Guilt and emotion flashed across Zach's face. He shook his head. I haven't treated you well enough. I'll do even better from now on. A trace of disdain flickered through Nora's eyes. She stepped closer, reached out to touch the bag in my arms, and exaggerated her admiration. Wow, I'm so jealous. Adam grabbed her wrist and pulled her back. Enough. I can hear you. Nora pouted. Then buy one for me. Adam looked her up and down before curling his lips into a lazy smile. Depends on my mood. Halfway through the night, I stepped out to use the restroom. I didn't expect Adam to follow me. He cornered me inside and locked the door behind us. Shouldn't you be thanking your husband too? Cut it out. You're acting like a creep. I shoved him, but he didn't budge. Narrowing his eyes with a grin, he absent-mindedly played with a strand of my hair. I know exactly what you're doing. If you want to play this game, I'm in. I pressed my lips together without answering. There were plenty of ways to play. Dragging each other down together was one. Or, he could keep walking his narrow bridge. I'd take my own wide, bright road instead. I finally get it. He ruffled my hair with a self-deprecating laugh. I'm just your free, reliable stand-in. Reliable? He certainly had confidence in himself. Chapter 6. When I came back from the restroom, I immediately noticed Nora's eyes were red. She looked like she'd just been crying. Zach seemed off too. He kept deliberately chatting with other people, avoiding Nora's gaze. I didn't need to guess what had happened. Nora had probably gotten jealous over the expensive gift Zach had given me and picked a fight with him. If only she knew. The bag had actually come from her own boyfriend. That would have been interesting. Adam had deliberately used Zach's name when he gave me the bag just to make Nora jealous. He wanted those two cheaters to start tearing each other apart. What made it even funnier was that, while I was in the restroom, I'd seen Zach texting Adam. Zach, where did that ridiculously expensive bag come from? I could never afford something like that. Besides, my girlfriend's pretty practical. She doesn't need a gift that expensive. Adam, Nora's been begging me for that bag. I staged the whole thing just to piss her off. Keep it. Consider it my good deed for the day. Not long afterward, Adam walked back into the room. 5 servers followed behind him, each carrying a bottle of premium liquor topped with sparkling fireworks. The tiny bursts of light instantly pushed the atmosphere to its peak. The whole room erupted in cheers and applause for Adam. Adam's generous, Zach whispered to me, but he's definitely not the settling down type. Makes a great friend, though, loyal as hell. I bit my lip and nodded. Yeah, you're the dependable one. After several rounds of drinks, Zach grabbed my hand, his eyes slightly watery. Honey, have a drink with me. I tilted my head away from the alcohol on his breath and answered softly. I'm driving. I can't. Just call a designated driver. He bumped my shoulder playfully. The gesture made my stomach turn. Without saying anything, I stayed where I was. He leaned against me again. Honey, do you always have to be so rational? Zach, I don't want. Before I could finish, the weight against me suddenly disappeared. At some point, Adam had walked over and yanked Zach away. What are you doing? Zach sounded nervous. Adam's eyes were unfocused, as if he'd had far too much to drink. He glanced at Zach, then shoved him aside. The next second, he bent over me, bracing both hands against the back of the couch on either side of my shoulders, trapping me in a tiny space. His warm breath brushed across my face. We were so close I could clearly see the anger and hatred burning in his eyes. My heart tightened. I tried to move away. A faint, vindictive smile tugged at his lips. Then he cupped the back of my head and kissed me. The room fell silent. Only for a second. Zach's face flushed crimson as he charged over, grabbed Adam by the shoulder, yanked him back, and drove his fist into Adam's cheekbone. The dull crack of flesh against bone marked the beginning of the night's chaos. Some people rushed in to break up the fight. Others jumped in to join it. Some troublemaker even put on an upbeat song, providing the perfect soundtrack for the brawl. I sat quietly on the couch, watching the show. Whenever the opportunity presented itself, I'd secretly kick Zach a couple of times. After what felt like forever, Zach finally fought his way out of the crowd. Staggering to the door, he turned on every light in the room. The sudden brightness shattered the atmosphere. Adam, I know you're drunk. As your brother, I'll let this slide. Zach's face was bruised and swollen, yet he still tried to play the reasonable, loyal friend. If I didn't know he was acting out of guilt, I might have applauded his performance. Standing in the middle of the room, Adam still carried that untamed edge. The shadow cast by his messy bangs hid his eyes, making it impossible to read his expression. He simply smiled, without saying a word. Nora, who'd been crying helplessly the whole time, finally stopped. She walked over to him, her voice muffled. Adam, you're drunk. Let's go home. Adam suddenly turned his head, across the crowd. His eyes met mine. He looked away almost immediately. Even so, my heart still skipped a beat. He really was fearless. Everything he did was reckless, thrilling, and completely impossible to predict. Yeah, I'm drunk. Adam waved a hand casually. Zach visibly relaxed. Still fuming, he dropped back onto the couch beside me, grabbed a napkin, and began scrubbing my lips hard, completely ignoring whether it hurt. I'd had enough. I slapped his hand away, stood up, and walked straight toward the exit. As I passed Adam, he raised an eyebrow at me. The smug satisfaction in his eyes wasn't even slightly concealed. That only made me angrier. I knew it. He'd started this whole mess on purpose. Chapter 7. After what happened at the bar, Zach became unbelievably clingy. He stopped going out for after-work drinks, came straight home every evening, brought me flowers, and would spend forever excitedly telling me about the tiniest things. I was exhausted by it. On top of that, I was in the middle of an internal promotion review. If I passed, I'd be promoted, so work had me swamped. The last person I wanted to see was him. At 6 that evening, Zach called again. It was the 8th time he'd called me that day. As soon as I answered, his deliberately gentle voice came through. "Honey, are you getting off work on time tonight?" I kept typing on my keyboard as I replied. "Probably not. Don't wait for me. Eat dinner and get some sleep, okay? Honey, we haven't had a proper meal together in forever. I booked your favorite restaurant tonight. Can't you skip the overtime just this once?" I smiled faintly. "Silly. Of course not. Once I get promoted and my raise comes through, I'll make it up to you." With that, I hung up, switched my phone to silent, and buried myself in work. After Zach betrayed me, I understood one thing more clearly than ever. Men could waste my time and energy. My career never would. By the time I finished work, it was already 1 in the morning, dragging my exhausted body out of the office. I saw Adam, on the quiet, dimly lit street. He leaned against the door of a black Range Rover. The glowing tip of the cigarette between his fingers flickered in the darkness, while white smoke drifted around him, making him look strangely lonely. "What are you doing here?" I asked as I walked over. We hadn't contacted each other for days. It was like we were competing to see who would give in first. Neither of us was willing to make the first move. Adam crushed out his cigarette, wrapped an arm around my waist, and pulled me into him, leaning close to my lips. He smiled. "I missed you. I'm so tired." I let myself sink into his embrace. Adam sighed softly, wrapped both arms around me, and buried his face against my shoulder. "Then relax for a while. How long have you been waiting?" "Not long. Only about 5 hours." He answered as casually as if it were nothing. I was speechless. Was something wrong with him? He'd rather wait downstairs by himself for 5 hours than send me a single message? What if I hadn't been working late? What was he supposed to do then? Unbelievable. "Let's go. I'm not going home tonight." I gently pushed him away and climbed into the car first. To my surprise, the night turned out incredibly peaceful. We simply lay under the same blanket, talking until we drifted off to sleep. Just before I completely lost consciousness, I felt someone press a gentle kiss to my forehead. The next morning, the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was Adam gazing at me with a pair of affectionate, smiling eyes. Awake? Grinning, he scooted a little closer. "Feeling better now?" Instinctively, I leaned back. A few seconds later, I finally realized what he'd meant. So, he behaved himself the night before because I'd said I was exhausted. What a thoughtful lover. Warmth spread through my chest. I buried my face against him and kissed him first. Afterward, feeling completely refreshed, I left the room and took the elevator downstairs. The elevator kept stopping, filling with more and more people until I was squeezed into the very back corner. When it reached the 3rd floor, a familiar voice drifted into my ears. Peering through the crowd, sure enough, it was Zach. Standing beside him was Nora. The two of them were discussing what to have for breakfast. Unbelievable. Fortunately, neither of them noticed me. When the elevator reached the lobby, people gradually stepped out until I was the only one left inside. Not wanting them to see me, I reached for the closed door button. Just then, Zach casually looked back. Our eyes met. "What are you doing here?" I spoke first. In an instant, I had taken control of the conversation. He froze for a split second before hurrying into the elevator and pressing the closed door button. "I came to meet a client." He straightened his clothes, carefully avoiding my eyes. "What about you? I thought I saw a girl standing next to you just now." Who was she? The reason Zach had rushed into the elevator was obvious. He didn't want me walking out and seeing Nora. "What girl? I have no idea what you're talking about. My client is a man." "You're overthinking it." He looked at me innocently, but the way his fingers kept fidgeting with his cufflinks betrayed just how nervous he was. I nodded. "Of course I trust you. If a couple loses trust in each other, then it's probably time to break up." A flicker of relief washed over Zach's face as he quickly changed the subject. "You must have been exhausted after working late last night, so you just came here to catch some sleep?" "Yeah. I didn't want to go home and wake you." I softened my voice into a playful pout. "Honey, once I'm through this busy period, let's take a trip and relax together." Chapter 8. While the two of us were busy putting on our little act, the elevator had somehow reached the 9th floor. The doors opened, Adam stood outside, staring at us in complete confusion. You too, he pointed at us, bewilderment written all over his face. My heart leaped into my throat. What were the odds? So, Adam lowered his eyes and said lazily, "Getting tired of your own bed? Figured you'd spice things up." Zach glanced at me, took my hand, and replied with a grin. "If you want to keep a relationship fresh, you've got to mix things up, right? You wouldn't get it. You've got plenty of women. I've only got one precious wife." Adam slowly drew out an O. Then he stepped into the elevator and gave me a meaningful look. My heart tightened. I hurriedly broke the silence. "I'm going to be late for work. Let's go." Adam let out a quiet chuckle before resting a hand on Zach's shoulder. "Let's meet up tonight. I've got something to tell you." The moment we walked out of the hotel, I shook off Zach's hand and hurried toward the curb to hail a cab. I didn't want to spend another second with them. I'd never imagined my life would end up like this. Once, I'd looked forward to love. I'd dreamed of a home for 2, 3 meals a day, 4 seasons together. I'd wanted nothing more than an ordinary but warm future. Instead, I watched love rot before my eyes, and now I was left picking through the wreckage, trying to lose with at least a little dignity. Before long, Zach texted me, "Honey, are you and Adam close?" Back then, to avoid misunderstandings and because I genuinely wasn't interested in making more friends, I never contacted Adam privately. But now, I supposed we were pretty close. Thinking about the way Zach had acted in the elevator made my skin crawl. Was he acting like the perfect husband in front of Adam because he felt guilty for sleeping with his girlfriend? Or had he started wondering whether someone had returned the favor? Another message popped up. "I don't mean anything by it. I just don't think Adam's a good guy. Keep your distance from him." I know. I'd wanted to type something longer, something convincing, but after staring at the screen for ages, I felt too disgusted to keep pretending. That was all I sent. At 6 that evening, Zach asked me to go with him to meet Adam. I agreed without hesitation. He sounded surprised. "Whenever I ask you out, you're always too busy. So why are you suddenly free today? I don't want your friends bringing their girlfriends while you're the only one showing up alone. That'd be awkward." I thought I sounded perfectly natural. For some reason, though, Zach went silent. After a long pause, he asked awkwardly, "When Adam kissed you that night, how did it feel?" I froze. "Zach, don't you think that's disgusting? How could I possibly have feelings for him? If you're still mad, go punch him again." I hung up before he could answer. My heart pounded wildly. Real life was dull. Work was exhausting. Maybe having a relationship that had to stay hidden, something dangerous enough to let me vent all that pressure, was more thrilling than I'd expected. After packing up, I left the office, exhausted. The moment I stepped outside, I spotted Adam, standing beneath the fading evening light with his hands in his pockets. He faced away from the sunset. The warm glow blurred his outline, giving him the carefree air of a rebellious young man. The moment he saw me, he skipped the small talk. "I'm breaking up with Nora tonight." I blinked, then forced a smile. "Just like that? Don't you think that's letting them off too easily?" Adam pressed his lips together. He lifted a hand, as if to ruffle my hair. Instinctively, I took a step back. He glanced at the hand left hanging in midair before smiling faintly. "If I don't break up with her, how am I supposed to pursue you openly? The day I got together with you, I stopped caring about getting even. Instead of wasting time playing games with them, I'd rather spend that time with you." I forced down the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Piece by piece, I tried to sort through the chaos and find my reason. After a long silence, I let out a slow breath. "Got it. I've got my own way of playing this. You do whatever you want." The light in Adam's eyes dimmed for a brief moment. He looked at me with a half smile. Right now, I just want to yell a few curse words." Before I could ask what he meant, he had already turned around, gotten into his car, and driven off. Chapter 9. Watching his taillights disappear into the distance, I felt even more exhausted. Was he angry? Why was he angry? Completely baffled, I walked to the parking garage and got into my car. The moment I sat down, my phone lit up. It was a voice message from Adam. You're not allowed to get involved tonight. Just wait for me to deal with everything. Then I'll come find you so we can work some overtime together. I fired back several question marks, making it clear I had no idea what he was talking about. He deliberately kept me hanging and didn't reply. In the end, I called him. Explain yourself. I don't want to waste my energy trying to guess what you're thinking. I got straight to the point. Adam answered matter-of-factly. Once I break up with Nora, Zach's going to have his hands full. When that happens, you can focus on working overtime with me. After thinking it over for a long moment, I let out a heavy sigh and turned serious. I still can't break up with Zach. You know what I'm trying to do, don't you? He chuckled. You're building him up just so the fall hurts more. I know. Bye. Following Adam's advice, I texted Zach and made an excuse to skip the gathering that night. Adam had been right. That same evening, Zach called to tell me he'd had too much to drink and didn't want to wake me, so he'd crash at a friend's place. Over the next few days, he kept coming up with different excuses not to come home. Sometimes Adam would even take my phone and reply to Zach's messages himself. Seeing you work so hard makes me happy, but it also breaks my heart. Baby, please take care of yourself. It's okay if you can't be with me. Just don't forget to miss me and take care of yourself. Are you eating well? Sleeping enough? Don't worry about me. I'll always trust you. Just take care of yourself. I had to admit, men really did know exactly how to win other men over. Although, why did every single message end with take care of yourself? On Wednesday night, Adam sent me a screenshot. It was one of Nora's social media posts. She was showing off a limited edition LV handbag, an even more expensive one than the one Adam had given me. Then came his message. Jealous? Call me husband, and I'll buy you an even more expensive one. I ignored him. Instead, I called Zach's mother. For the past few days, I'd been working hard to build a good relationship with his family, showering them with attention and money. Now, I was just waiting for the right opportunity. That night, after working late, I went home to grab a change of clothes. Just as I was about to leave again, I ran into Zach. He reeked of alcohol. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. He clearly hadn't been sleeping well. For some reason, Adam's constant take care of yourself messages suddenly came to mind. You're back? Zach slowly changed into his slippers, took off his jacket, then walked over with his arms spread wide, asking for a hug. You smell like alcohol. Don't touch me. I took a step back, but Zach stubbornly moved closer anyway. He wrapped his arms around me and lowered his head toward my lips. A chill ran down my spine. Even so, I forced myself to stay calm. Zach, is something bothering you? No matter how disgusted I felt, I couldn't let it show now. Not when I was this close. Zach stopped. He buried his face deep in the crook of my neck, his voice hoarse. Baby, I'm so tired. After listening to him complain for quite a while, I finally learned the truth. His mother had started pressuring him to get married. Perfect. My money had done its job. His mother had always believed her son was exceptional and had plenty of better options. Because of that, she'd always been lukewarm toward our relationship. But over the past few weeks, I'd swallowed my pride, gone out of my way to please her, and finally won her over. Let's wait a little longer before getting married. We're both at critical points in our careers. Zach looked at me earnestly. I pressed my lips together and looked back at him with pitiful eyes. A flash of guilt crossed his face. He quickly pulled me into his arms, avoiding my gaze. I've always wanted to marry you. You know that. But a headhunter recently approached me. I want to step out of my comfort zone and see what else is out there. Just give me a little more time. I widened my eyes in delight. Really? Zach, you're so talented. You'll succeed wherever you go. I knew I chose the right man. Hearing my enthusiastic praise, Zach lit up, excited. He began talking nonstop about the wonderful future that lay ahead. Chapter 10. I patiently listened to him. Halfway through, I went to the bathroom and discreetly put on a sanitary pad, just in case. In the end, though, I'd overestimated Zach. Less than 3 seconds after hitting the bed, he was fast asleep, snoring. I finally relaxed, curled up on the couch. I drifted off before I knew it. I slept deeply. Maybe I dreamed about countless memories with Zach. Or maybe I was simply mourning the sincere, hopeful version of myself I'd once been. When I woke up again, dawn was just breaking, with the living room lights still off. It was hard to tell whether it was night or morning. I'd forgotten to charge my phone, so it had died. After turning it back on, I found more than a dozen missed calls and dozens of unread messages. Every single one was from Adam. The last one had been sent 5 minutes earlier. Miriam, are you trying to drive me crazy? My finger hovered over the screen for a long time. In the end, I chose not to reply. For some reason, I'd always been wary of Adam. Maybe it was simple human instinct to avoid what felt dangerous. Half an hour later, my makeup was flawless again. I looked like any other office worker, fully armed for another workday. No matter how messy my love life became, it could never interfere with my job. That had always been my rule. I'd rather dump all my resentment, anger, and frustration onto Adam than let my emotions throw off the rhythm of my own life. I'd secretly analyzed why I'd gotten involved with him. Part of it was revenge, but another part needed something thrilling enough to survive this filthy, chaotic relationship. A place to vent my anger, a way to reclaim the time I'd lost, a buffer that kept my entire life from falling apart. Adam had texted me at 1 in the morning saying he was waiting downstairs. I never expected him to still be there at sunrise, standing in the morning mist with his hands in his pockets. He looked worn out. A circle of cigarette butts lay scattered at his feet. I walked toward him, but before I could finish, you don't reply. I worry. He said it calmly. Then he turned around and walked away. The first rays of dawn slowly climbed over the horizon, their orange glow trying to wake the cold, sleeping city. Silently, I watched Adam's figure disappear into the distance. For some reason, a sharp ache stabbed at my chest. That shouldn't have happened. What kind of relationship did we have? How could I possibly be feeling something like this? Or, was this just another one of Adam's games? Was he trying to make me actually fall for him? I wrestled with those thoughts the entire drive. Only after walking into the office did I finally leave the endless speculation behind and switch back into work mode. I had to admit, work could become addictive. It gave me a perfectly reasonable excuse to avoid reality, and every accomplishment reminded me that I still had value. Maybe that was also why Zach and I had fallen apart. Another busy day passed. Around 9 that evening, Zach suddenly called. He told me Adam had already started seeing someone new and had invited everyone to a couple's gathering. He asked if I wanted to come. He broke up yesterday and already found someone new today. My brother's unbelievable. Damn, Zach laughed. My eyes stung slightly. Closing them, I rubbed the corners gently. I already skipped seeing your friends with you yesterday. If I skip again today, it'll make you look bad. Wait for me. I'll come pick you up. After meeting up with Zach, we drove together to Adam's bar. The lights were dim and intimate. The music pulsed through the room. In the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by cheering people, Adam stood with a cool-looking girl with short hair. Their faces were pressed together, as if they were kissing. Zach let out an excited shout and grabbed my hand, eager to join the crowd. A wave of resistance suddenly rose inside me. I pulled my hand free, silently shook my head, and walked toward a quiet corner instead. I couldn't explain why. I simply didn't want to look at Adam, no matter how curious I was. I forced myself not to. Chapter 11. As the party got wilder, I grew quieter. Zach came over twice to coax me back into the fun, but I refused to budge. He shot me a look that practically screamed I was embarrassing him, then walked away looking annoyed. My chest felt so tight I could barely breathe. I got up and headed to the restroom for a cigarette. When I came out, Adam was already waiting outside. He glanced at a nearby staff member and pointed at the under maintenance sign. I've got something important to take care of. Put this at the entrance and don't let anyone in. I stared at him in disbelief. I couldn't believe someone could be this brazen. With a faint smile, Adam slipped an arm around my shoulders, pulled me back into the restroom, and locked the door behind us. Are you mad? The question came out of nowhere. He walked to the sink and casually looked at himself in the mirror. Yet I could feel his eyes watching me through the reflection. When I didn't answer after a long moment, he suddenly pressed me against the door, towering over me as he studied my face. Why aren't you fighting with me? Do you look down on me or something? What a strange guy. Zach did everything he could to avoid arguing with me. Adam, on the other hand, practically wanted me to pick a fight with him. The dim restroom lights reflected off the tiny tiled walls like ripples shimmering across a lake. Tilting my head back, I slowed my breathing. Do we really need to argue over something this small? His expression changed instantly. A stubborn, almost childlike obsession flashed across his eyes. He lowered his head and crushed his lips against mine, silencing every word I was about to say. I tried to pull away. He only kissed me harder. The moment the kiss finally ended, I barely had time to catch my breath before Zach's voice came through the thin restroom door. You really saw Miriam go into the restroom with Adam? My blood started racing. There was a strange thrill, like standing on the edge of a battlefield, mixed with uncertainty and regret that things were falling apart sooner than they were supposed to. Maybe my expression gave everything away. Adam let out a low chuckle and lightly kissed the bridge of my nose. I didn't kiss that girl. I'm clean. I blinked before realizing he was explaining what had happened on the dance floor earlier. Seriously? At a time like this, that was what he cared about? You think this is the time to talk about that? I laughed despite myself. We're about to get caught red-handed. Adam nodded solemnly. True, we're amateurs. Got caught way too easily. Watching him struggle to suppress the smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, I suddenly wondered, had he planned all of this from the beginning? Outside, whoever was there had already grown impatient enough to start kicking the door. Adam, meanwhile, still had the leisure to smooth my hair into place. When we go out, don't say a word. Just watch me. He whispered that into my ear, then yanked the door open and strode out with a cold expression. I waited a few seconds before silently following him. The instant Zach saw us walk out together, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. His nostrils flared violently. His lips trembled, opening and closing without forming a single coherent word. Only broken sounds escaped him. His chest heaved, and both his hands and legs were shaking. I honestly thought he might collapse and start convulsing at any second. The commotion had drawn a crowd. People gathered all around us, their curious eyes darting back and forth between the three of us. One hand tucked casually into his pocket. Adam looked at Zach with half-lidded eyes full of disdain. What exactly did you think we were doing? Having an affair? The moment the words left his mouth, Zach threw a vicious punch at Adam's face. Adam sidestepped it effortlessly, caught Zach's wrist, and stopped him cold. You wouldn't let me ask her about Nora. Fine. So I'll ask you instead. Adam flung Zach's hand away, pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a couple of times, then shoved it right in Zach's face. The instant Zach heard Nora's name, all the aggression drained out of him. He stumbled backward a step, suddenly wary as he stared at the screen. Then, without warning, Adam turned the phone toward me instead. The evidence is this obvious. And you still don't believe he's cheating? Are you seriously that naive? On the screen was a side-angle photo of Zach and Nora chatting and laughing together in the hallway of a hotel. I lowered my eyes to hide my emotions while my mind raced. Well played. He'd turned getting caught into catching someone else. Just like that. The entire situation had flipped. Now the question was, how was I supposed to keep this performance going? Chapter 12. Zach rushed over to me. After looking at the photo on Adam's phone, he turned back to me, anxiously searching my face. Miriam, let me explain. Fine. My eyes filled with tears, and I fought to keep them from falling. Explain. I'd known about Zach's cheating for a long time. I'd spent countless nights trying to reason with myself and accept reality. But standing here, confronting him face to face, the anger still overwhelmed me. A blazing fury filled my chest. I wanted to drag him down with me. Zach stammered for a long time before finally looking at me with pleading eyes. I didn't do anything to betray you. Can we go home and talk about this? If you hadn't betrayed me, then why did we need to go home to talk? Had he run out of lies convincing enough to fool me? Before I could say anything, Adam stormed over and grabbed Zach by the collar. Go home? We haven't settled things between us yet. Zach struggled violently, looking both embarrassed and furious. After finally breaking free, he leaned against the wall, bent over, and gasped for breath. Adam, what the hell do you take me for? Adam let out a snort. My best friend. After saying that, he shot me a sideways glance, satisfaction and revenge flickering across his face. Those words made Zach's eyes turn red. He didn't dare say another word, left with no other choice. He looked up at me with pleading eyes, like a child who knew he'd done something wrong but didn't have the courage to admit it or the slightest idea how to make it right. Something inside me crumbled completely. I could feel it with absolute certainty. The first love I'd spent 5 years protecting, the relationship we'd spent 5 years trying to make work, was dying right in front of me, and it was dying in the ugliest way imaginable. I couldn't bear to stay another second. I turned and walked away as fast as I could. Every extra glance at Zach made me hate myself a little more. He chased after me, repeating over and over that I should let him explain. Maybe he just wanted an excuse to escape that humiliating situation. Yet he still managed to act so heartbreakingly devoted. How much had I ever really known him? "Can we go home?" Once we were outside the bar, Zach timidly tugged at the hem of my shirt, his eyes red as he pleaded. How pathetic. And yet, I agreed. After all, the show wasn't over yet. When we got home, we sat across from each other at the dining table in silence. Eventually, Zach spoke first. "What did Adam tell you?" Watching him carefully test the waters, I found it almost laughable. "So tell me the truth. Did anything happen between you and Nora?" Zach fell silent again. I finally snapped. "Have you figured out a lie that I'll actually believe yet?" Zach raked a hand through his hair, as if he'd finally made up his mind. He suddenly raised his voice. "Honey, Nora and I are just friends. Her company has a project with ours, so we've been seeing each other more often because of work. You know what kind of person I am, don't you?" Well played. My fingers trembled as I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I picked up my phone, forcing myself not to expose his lie. 2 minutes earlier, Adam had sent me a message. 20 minutes already. This should be over by now, right? I'm downstairs. If you don't come down in 3 minutes, I'm coming up to steal you away. Without changing my expression, I turned off the screen and looked at Zach with a pained expression. "Is it really that simple?" Zach nodded firmly. "You have to trust me. Adam doesn't have any real proof that anything happened between Nora and me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come just to test you, right? He would have come after me a long time ago. No guy can stand being cheated on. You know that, don't you?" "Oh, really?" He refused to admit a thing. He was even trying to fish for information, trying to find out whether Adam had any other evidence. Very clever. I slowly stood up and weakly waved a hand. "Just let me be alone for a while. My head's a mess right now." Chapter 13. Adam really was as reckless as he claimed. When I stepped out of my apartment, he had already taken the elevator up. We ran into each other halfway. If I'd come down even a minute later, he really would have knocked on my door. "He didn't do anything to you, did he?" Adam naturally wrapped an arm around my waist. Like an affectionate puppy, he leaned in and sniffed me, exhausted. I let myself collapse into his arms. "You planned everything today, didn't you?" Instead of exposing Zach all at once, Adam had deliberately left him just enough hope to cling to. Then he'd stood back and watched coldly as Zach exhausted himself chasing that false hope. And he'd even dragged Zach's girlfriend into the whole performance. Cruel. Adam reached over and pinched my nose. "You're making me sound way too complicated." I just wanted to. His gaze drifted downward, and a roguish smile spread across his face. Once again, Adam brought me back to his place, with obvious pride. He pointed at his bedroom. "I bought a new bed. Bigger, softer." My eyes drifted toward the couch. Every detail of the night we'd given into temptation came rushing back. I let out a bitter laugh. Maybe the quiet life I'd imagined, getting married, having children, growing old peacefully, was never meant for me. Was this my failure? Or was life simply like this? Endless disappointments, promises left broken, relationships too tangled to cut loose, rules of the world too complicated to untangle. I closed my eyes. Just before my emotions completely fell apart, I turned, rose onto my toes, grabbed Adam by the collar, and kissed him. He kissed me back almost instantly. He understood me, or maybe he simply understood women. When passion demanded intensity, he didn't hold back. When tenderness was needed, he was endlessly patient. When the moment reached its peak, Adam pulled me tightly into his arms. I bit my lip, unable to pay attention to anything else. Then, to my surprise, he suddenly climbed out of bed. "So that's it?" he muttered with mock annoyance. "If I don't even get that much, why the hell am I trying so hard?" Dizzy, I lay there on the bed, completely unsure whether I wanted to laugh or cry. That night, somewhere between sleep and dreams, I felt myself being pulled into an embrace that carried the faint scent of tobacco. I thought I heard him whisper beside my ear, "Good night, wifey." I must have been dreaming. Adam didn't seem like the kind of man who'd play sweet little games like that. When I woke up the next morning, the other side of the bed was empty. I picked up my phone. 6 o'clock. Where had he gone? I ran a hand through my messy hair and walked out of the bedroom. The moment I opened the door, the sweet aroma of breakfast drifted through the air. Following the scent, I found Adam busy in the open kitchen. The warm light above him outlined his profile with effortless perfection. A wave of emotion surged through me so suddenly that I almost burst into tears. The intensity of it terrified me. I couldn't even understand it myself. So, I ran, without washing my face, without putting on makeup, looking like a complete mess. I rushed out the door and kept running. Only after I was far away from Adam's apartment did I finally stop at a bus stop. Standing there, I slowly realized just how foolish I'd been, and I finally understood something with absolute clarity. Adam and I weren't evenly matched when it came to matters of the heart. I wasn't nearly as rational or emotionally mature as I'd convinced myself I was. When it came to relationships, I was a complete rookie. I needed to get away from him, fast. Otherwise, the consequences were impossible to predict. Chapter 14. When my taxi pulled up outside the office building, Zach suddenly appeared and blocked my way. "Miriam, you..." He hesitated before lowering his head. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I never meant to hurt you like this." The moment he saw how drained I looked, guilt flooded his eyes. "Seriously? Running into my cheating ex while wearing no makeup. Just my luck." He reached for my hand, but I took a small step back. "I have to work." "Okay." Zach smiled with exaggerated tenderness. "Then I'll pick you up after work tonight." "No." I took a deep breath. "I need some time alone. I need to figure out what we're supposed to do about us." Panic flashed across Zach's face. He hurriedly grabbed my hand and held it against his chest. "Miriam, I know I messed up. I didn't make you feel secure enough. Please don't make any rash decisions. I'll change. Just give me one more chance." I forcefully pulled my hand free and walked past him without another word. After I got to the office, I picked up my phone and sent Adam a message. "Don't show up for the next few days. I'm busy." Less than a minute later, he replied, "Okay." Cold. Just one word. I almost envied him. If only I could control my feelings as effortlessly as he did, getting close when he wanted, walking away just as easily. Unfortunately, willpower couldn't make up for what came naturally. Over the next few days, Adam really didn't contact me again, but from the stories he posted every day, I could tell his life was just as colorful as ever. It was obvious he didn't need me to keep himself entertained. Zach, on the other hand, came to my office almost every chance he got. He showered me with attention, trying every possible way to win me back. None of my coworkers knew what had happened between us. They just thought we were the perfect couple and kept teasing us about getting married already, not wanting to become office gossip. I could only brush them off with vague smiles. I never expected Zach to actually act on the idea. Friday evening, the moment I walked out of the office building, I saw him kneeling inside a circle of glowing candles, holding a bouquet of roses. His face was filled with affection. I stopped in my tracks. A wave of nausea rolled through me. "Almost over. Just a little longer. Miriam, marry me!" Zach shouted at the top of his lungs. The crowd gathering around us instantly erupted into cheers. Across the flickering candlelight, I looked at him and couldn't help sneering inwardly. Beneath this beautiful picture was something rotten beyond repair. What a waste it would be if no one ever saw who he really was. I forced tears into my eyes. Stepping over the circle of candles, I walked up to him, meeting his hopeful gaze. I stood there for a long moment before finally forcing the words past the lump in my throat. "Zach, I love you." He shot to his feet and pulled me into his arms. I know. He knew? That completely caught me off guard. Was he really that confident? For a second, I almost forgot how to keep acting. When I didn't say anything, Zach released me. His eyes reddened as he took my hand and slid the ring from the jewelry box onto my index finger. Miriam, I love you even more. A low chuckle suddenly drifted through the crowd. It sounded completely out of place amid the romantic atmosphere. Zach's expression changed instantly. In the reflection of his dark eyes, I saw Adam. My heart leaped into my throat. Why was he here? Adam, what are you doing here? Zach pulled me behind him, staring Adam down warily. Adam looked completely at ease, as though he'd simply wandered over during an evening stroll, both hands tucked casually into his pockets. The night breeze stirred the loose strands of hair across his forehead, making the light in his eyes flicker. Almost deliberately, his gaze lingered on me. He dragged out the single syllable, refusing to get to the point, making everyone wait in suspense. I'm here to propose to. The words landed as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. Then, without the slightest hurry, he pulled a sparkling diamond ring from his pocket. Compared to the one Zach had just put on my finger, it was much larger, much more exquisite. Adam, have you lost your mind? Zach shouted, completely losing control. Adam tilted his head and smiled with innocent ease. Miriam, do you dare? I heard Zach's fists clench so tightly that his knuckles cracked. A rush of satisfaction swept through me. But this still wasn't enough. The pain after happiness, the loss after finally getting what you wanted. That was the kind of pain that truly destroyed people. I reached out and took Zach's hand. Let's go. I don't know what he's trying to do. Zach led me away. As we passed Adam, I looked at him one last time. Maybe I imagined it, but it looked as though his eyes had begun to glisten. How much longer? Are you going to make me be the one who suffers? His voice was barely above a whisper, but I heard every word. Chapter 15. I'd been making an effort to get on Zach's mom's good side for a long time. The moment she found out Zach had successfully proposed to me, she was over the moon. She spent nearly 2 hours on a video call urging him to marry me as soon as possible. I put on a shy smile. But didn't Zach say a headhunter was trying to recruit him? Wouldn't getting married now affect his career? Zach waved his hands repeatedly. Actually, it's better to get such a big life event out of the way before joining a new company. It'll save my new boss the trouble. Imagine starting a new job and immediately asking for honeymoon leave. That would annoy anyone. Oh, really? You really could justify anything with that mouth of yours. I nodded in agreement. That actually makes sense. Before taking my shower, I slipped a sleeping pill into Zach's water. By the time I came back out, he was already fast asleep, snoring loudly. I looked at him with disgust before heading into the study to finish my work. The internal audit on my side was almost complete. The reason I'd stayed silent after discovering Zach's affair was because I didn't want anything to interfere with this project. And I certainly wasn't about to let a cheating jerk off that easily by breaking up with him too soon. Now, everything was almost finished. My phone suddenly lit up. Adam was calling me. After plugging in my earbuds, I answered. On the screen, he looked drunk. His eyes were unfocused. His cheeks slightly flushed. He was sprawled across a red velvet sofa with his shirt unbuttoned low enough to reveal the toned lines of his chest. Fresh out of the shower? The moment the words left his mouth, something seemed to occur to him. He suddenly sat upright, his expression turning fierce. So, did you two sleep together? Maybe I was just in a good mood, but seeing him like this, I actually thought he was adorable. I must have lost my mind. What do you think? Leaning back in my chair, I fought to keep from smiling. The video call ended almost instantly. A second later, a message popped up. I'm coming over right now. You're dead. I wrapped my coat around myself and went downstairs to wait for Adam. To my surprise, he showed up on a shared bike. He was breathing hard. The strands of hair on his forehead were soaked with sweat, sticking to his skin and making his already handsome features look even sharper. Watching him lock up the bike, something gently stirred inside me. Soft ripples spread quietly across my heart. Many years later, I learned that scene had been completely staged. He hadn't actually ridden the bike all the way there. He'd simply grabbed a shared bike near the entrance to my apartment complex and pretended he'd rushed over in a panic. Even the sweat was fake. He'd splashed mineral water on himself. When is riding a bike faster than driving? He'd later explained with complete confidence. I'm not stupid. Besides, back then you never felt sorry for me. So I had to think of something. That was his explanation. After locking the bike, Adam walked over to me, bracing both hands on his knees. He spent a while catching his breath before finally straightening up. Then he looked straight at me. You've been having fun, haven't you? But did you ever stop to think about how I felt? I overthink things too. I lie awake all night. I lose my appetite. I start thinking that you don't care about me at all. Looking at the hurt on his face, I suddenly felt a strange fear. It was as though he'd gotten too deep into the act. So deep that he couldn't pull himself back out. I opened my mouth but couldn't think of a single thing to say. Adam lowered his head until his lips were beside my ear. Miriam. He paused. His warm breath brushed against my neck, making me instinctively want to pull away. So, are you still going to make me guess? The moment he finished speaking, I felt an enormous sense of relief. I hurriedly pushed him away, shaking my head so hard it was almost comical. No more guessing. We didn't sleep together. The wounded look vanished from his face in an instant. His usual cocky grin returned. Such a good girl. You had me worried for nothing. I couldn't help rolling my eyes before turning to leave. This man really had nerves of steel. He could flirt anywhere, anytime. But before I'd taken more than 2 steps, a hand caught my arm. The next moment, I was pulled backward. He cupped the back of my head, leaned down, and kissed me before I had any chance to protest. Only after a long while did he finally let me go. You turned down my proposal. I'm still a little upset. Consider that your punishment. I let out a snort. If you're lonely, just say you're lonely. No need to make up so many excuses. You're way too dramatic. The light in Adam's eyes dimmed slightly. He didn't argue. Under the bright moonlight, our mingled breaths quietly wove an intimate tension through the stillness of the night. Chapter 16. Zach threw himself into planning the wedding. It was obvious he was panicking. He wanted to lock me down with marriage as quickly as possible. Disgusting. He couldn't bear to let go after investing so much time, money, and effort. So now he wanted to tie me to him for the rest of my life. Our parents have been waiting forever for us to get married, Zach said while scrolling through his phone. There's really not much left to prepare. Once I pay the bride price, we can get our marriage license. I stayed focused on my work and ignored him. He seemed used to it and kept talking to himself. Then his voice suddenly rose. That's right. We still haven't taken our wedding photos. The weather's perfect for an outdoor shoot right now. My fingers paused over the keyboard. Turning to look at him, I smiled gently. Whatever you think is best. He hurried over and sat cross-legged beside me. Honey, I think I just realized something. What is it? I pretended to be interested. You love me even more than I thought. He actually looked a little shy. I seriously wanted to chop something. Of course I do. I love you, and I trust you. So don't ever let me lose. Because if you do, I'll completely lose my mind. I spoke every word with complete sincerity. Zach pulled me into his arms. Honey, I swear I'll treat you well for the rest of my life. I'll never let you down. Hugging really was convenient. You didn't have to look at the other person's face. Our wedding photos were scheduled for the day before I finished the internal audit. My supervisor kindly gave me the day off. Between the lines, he made it clear that all my hard work over the past few months wouldn't go unrewarded. So, I cheerfully left behind a mountain of unfinished work and boarded a flight to Yunnan. The moment the plane landed, I turned on my phone. Just as I'd expected, Zach had gone completely crazy looking for me. His parents, his relatives, his friends, everyone was searching. Adam was looking for me too. Unlike Zach's family, though, he wasn't exactly polite about it. More than a dozen messages. Every single one threatened what he'd do to me when he found me. Only the last one was remotely civilized. Miriam, if you don't answer my calls, don't blame me when I make our relationship official on social media. The message had been sent half an hour earlier. Figuring he probably hadn't acted yet, I opened his social media. I froze. The old crazy Adam is dead. Now I'm Adam, the puppy boy. Please keep your distance. If there's an event with single women, don't invite me. Attached was a side profile photo of me wearing a bathrobe while drying my hair. Posted 20-something minutes ago. Seriously? He gave me exactly 1 minute after sending the message. Then he actually posted it? Looking at the long list of likes from what appeared to be our mutual friends, my heart went cold, colder than a butcher's knife. I immediately fired off several messages. You just ruined my entire plan. If Zach finds out about us this easily, he's getting off way too lightly. I need to stay on the moral high ground from beginning to end. That's the only way everyone will condemn him even more. Now that you've posted this, how am I supposed to make people call him out? Adam! I was furious. His response? A single word. Okay, that was it? Suppressing my anger, I decided I'd deal with him after I got settled. Instead, he lost patience first. Less than 2 minutes later, my phone rang. The moment I answered, he shouted, "Would it kill you to comfort me for once? Seriously? He thought he was the victim?" You know what? I snapped back. I've already picked out where I'd bury you. He fell silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was tight with frustration. You've actually got the nerve to say that? You're the one who ignored my messages. Didn't I tell you before? When you don't reply, I worry. What exactly am I supposed to make you worry about? My tone softened despite myself. I'm an adult, but no matter what, you shouldn't have posted that. And what was that puppy boy nonsense? Since when are you a puppy boy? You're right. I shouldn't have called myself a puppy boy. I should have just called myself a simp. The moment he finished speaking, he hung up. I stared speechlessly at the dark screen. Then, I became even more speechless. Adam sent me a screenshot of the post. It turned out the post had been visible only to me. Those so-called mutual friends who had liked it, they were all his alternate accounts. He'd simply changed each account's display name to match the names of our mutual friends. How could anyone be this ridiculous? Did men really stay teenagers forever? What was even the point of all this? Almost as if he'd read my mind, another message popped up. I'm not this childish with just anyone. Chapter 17. After my 3-day vacation, I returned to work. During the weekly meeting, my manager announced the final audit results. I had passed. As applause filled the room, I couldn't help feeling emotional. My love life might have been a complete disaster, but at least my career had finally paid off. Back at my desk, I removed Zach from my blocked list and sent him a message. Let's meet tonight. A promotion, a raise, and dumping my cheating ex. 3 reasons to celebrate. I was going to enjoy every single one today. His replies came almost immediately. Where are you? What the hell are you playing at? Do you have any idea what you've put my family through? My parents even went back to your hometown to beg your parents for answers. I already knew. My mom had told me about it the night before. She said Zach's parents had shown up with a pile of gifts, desperately trying to find out where I was. But on the very day I flew to Yunnan, I'd already warned my mom. I told her not to take the wedding seriously. Treat it like a joke. You already know why. I sent back only that. Nothing tortured a guilty conscience more than words like those. Over the past few weeks, he'd probably been secretly congratulating himself. He'd done something so disgusting, and still thought he'd gotten away with it. Now, he had to be suffering, clinging to hope while dreading the truth. After organizing all the photos and chat records that Adam and I had collected proving Zach's affair, I sent Adam a message. Play your part tonight. Adam replied with a voice message. His low, teasing voice was almost dangerously seductive. Don't worry. I'll give the performance of my life. I rolled my eyes. But I still played it 2 more times. Adam, the puppy boy. Yeah, he wore that title surprisingly well. When I got off work that evening, I found Zach waiting downstairs outside my office. His mother was with him, watching him hide behind her, obviously nervous and lacking confidence. I understood immediately. He'd brought his mom to bail him out. How pathetic. I'd never realized he was such a mama's boy. Auntie. My eyes welled with tears as I walked over and greeted her softly. What happened? Did you two have a fight? She'd clearly arrived angry, but the moment she saw I was on the verge of tears, her tone softened despite herself. Just as I was about to speak, Zach nervously tugged at his mother's sleeve. Mom, let's go home first. There are too many people here. Exactly. The more people, the better. I'd thought about simply slapping him a couple of times. That would hurt for a while. Then he'd forget. But public humiliation? That would follow him forever. There would always be someone reminding him of this day. That's why I deliberately encouraged his mother to rush us into marriage. I wanted all our relatives and friends to know we were getting married, so that when the truth finally came out, Zach's reputation would be destroyed completely. All I had to do was play the heartbroken victim. Just as I was wondering how to make an even bigger scene, Adam appeared, without a word. He rushed over and drove his fist straight into Zach's nose. "You piece of trash! Was sleeping with your best friend's woman worth it? You'd know the answer better than anyone." I thought silently. His voice was loud. His accusation hit like a bomb. Within moments, everyone nearby had stopped walking and gathered around us in a circle, crying. I pulled the photos from my bag and threw them into the air. They fluttered everywhere, scattering across the ground so every bystander could see them clearly. Many people immediately pulled out their phones. Some zoomed in to photograph every picture. Zach panicked. While taking punches from Adam, he dropped to his knees, desperately scrambling to pick up the photos. His mother rushed to help him. Her face shifted between red and pale. Finally, she glared at me. "Miriam, are you trying to ruin my son's life?" Large tears rolled down my cheeks. I looked at her with wounded eyes. "Auntie, your son cheated on me. Why are you blaming me instead?" The crowd exploded. People immediately began condemning both Zach and his mother. Some even shoved their phones right into Zach's face, declaring they were going to expose him as the cheating scumbag he was. This was still outside my office. I didn't want to make an even bigger spectacle than necessary. Covering my face, I turned and ran. The less of the full story people knew, the more they'd fill in the blanks themselves. And what had happened tonight was already more than enough. Chapter 18. There was one last fire I needed to start. After posting every photo of Zach and Nora's affair in Zach's family group chat, I left a single message: "The wedding is off." Then I exited the group. Mission accomplished. Zach never contacted me again. I was more than happy to enjoy the peace and spent the entire evening rewarding Adam. The next day, I found out Zach's mother had suffered a heart attack and been hospitalized. "Do you feel bad for her?" Adam texted. "A parent's failure to teach their child is also their responsibility." I replied. In the age of the internet, news spread fast. Before long, Zach and Nora's affair was everywhere. As the victim, I received an overwhelming amount of sympathy and praise, including from my boss. He told me he admired how I'd managed to complete such an important project while dealing with such a complicated relationship. I shared the news with Adam. "Half the credit belongs to you. Without him staying by my side, without giving me someone to vent to, all those negative emotions would have crushed me long ago." "Not bad. You've finally learned to appreciate me," Adam replied. I was about to thank him properly when another message popped up. "Show me how grateful you are tonight." Someone must have tipped off a popular influencer. With all the online attention, Zach and Nora's scandal refused to die down. Eventually, the fallout became too much. Both of them were fired. Even the headhunter who had been trying to recruit Zach wanted nothing to do with him anymore. In an excellent mood, I sat down with Adam to discuss how to deliver the final blow. "You know," Adam suddenly said, "when I first approached you, I thought you'd chicken out or call me a psycho. I never expected you'd end up enjoying this even more than I did. You're a ruthless woman." I froze for a moment. So all this time, while I'd thought he was dangerous, he'd thought I was ruthless. I really did love Zach. That's why I hated him so much. Adam nodded and wrapped an arm around my waist. "But honestly, I'm grateful to Zach. If it weren't for him, you and I never would have crossed paths." Tonight, he seemed unusually sentimental. That night, while I drifted in and out of sleep, Adam whispered beside my ear, "You heartless woman, now that you've gotten what you wanted, are you going to kick me to the curb?" I sighed silently to myself, then wrapped my arms around his waist. The next morning, I carefully put on glamorous makeup. When I saw Adam wearing a dark blue hoodie, I deliberately picked out a blue dress to match him. "How about wearing the ring too?" Adam opened a drawer, took out the diamond ring, and held it up in front of me. Bright morning sunlight streamed through the window. A single ray landed perfectly across the side of his face, filling his eyes with a gentle warmth. On the most ordinary of mornings, looking at his roguish grin, my heart suddenly raced the way it had when I was a teenage girl. I held out my hand. "I think that's a great idea." Almost like it was a joke. He took out the same ring he'd once claimed was for a proposal, and slipped it onto my ring finger. There wasn't much ceremony, yet every tiny detail made me happier than I'd expected. By the time we arrived outside Zach's apartment building, my heart was pounding, even more than it had when I'd exposed his affair in public. Maybe Adam felt the same way. He held me especially close. As the elevator doors closed, I looked up at him and smiled. "Don't start a fight later. Once we're done, let's leave." Adam raised an eyebrow, as if I'd want to spend one extra second with him. Chapter 19. The elevator numbers climbed floor by floor. The moment we reached the familiar floor, 2 tears slipped down my cheeks without warning. Without saying a word, Adam looked away, took my hand, and led me into the battlefield. When Zach opened the door and saw us together, his expression changed in an instant. Shock, anger, then bitter mockery. He staggered backward until his lower back slammed into the dining table. Only then did he stop. "We're here to help Miriam move out." Adam's voice was as calm as if he were commenting on the weather, the faint smile on his lips as effortless as ever. Zach kept his head lowered without saying a word. An awkward silence spread through the room. I savored it. After a long while, he finally looked up with red-rimmed eyes, glaring at me with burning hatred. "When did you two get together?" I looked up at Adam before smiling back at Zach. "You guess." Zach ground his teeth so hard they almost cracked. The muscles in his jaw trembled, and hatred blazed in his eyes. Good. Now he finally knew what betrayal felt like. "He's my best friend," he roared at Adam. Adam nodded. "So I was your best friend? Then what about Nora? If you wanted her so badly, you could have just told me. Why sneak around behind everyone's back? Don't you think that's disgusting?" Zach showed no remorse whatsoever. Instead, he sounded almost justified. "Nora came onto me first. She stripped naked right in front of me. What man could resist that?" Then he pointed at me. "No man could." So, that was his explanation? In his mind, he was the victim? Suppressing the disgust rising inside me, I deliberately raised my left hand, showing off the ring on my finger. Only animals can't control what's between their legs. Zach lunged toward me as if he wanted to grab me. Adam reacted instantly, stepping in front of me. "When did you two get together?" Zach demanded again through gritted teeth. Adam blinked. He didn't answer. "So it wasn't just a coincidence at the hotel? You were already together back then?" Adam blinked again. "You guess. Earlier than that?" Zach bared his teeth like an enraged gorilla. I slipped my arm through Adam's. "He's smarter than I expected. Give him some time. He'll figure it out eventually. Let's go pack. When we're done, we're going to the movies." Adam nodded. He shoved Zach aside without another word and walked in with me. There wasn't much to take. Just some clothes. And a few books. When everything was packed, I rolled my suitcase over in front of Zach. "Want to check it?" He sat slumped on the couch with half a cigarette between his fingers. Without even looking up, he muttered, "Get the hell out. I never want to see you again. You're disgusting. Slut." That instantly lit a fire inside me. I grabbed a glass of water nearby and splashed it straight into his face. "Zach, what gives you the right to call me that? And what exactly does that make you? Was I supposed to quietly put up with everything and wait for you to magically become a better man? Why can't I fight back? Why can't I treat you the same way you treated me?" Zach froze for a second before looking at me coldly. "So it's all my fault? You think you have zero responsibility just because I cheated? Were you ever even a proper girlfriend? Every time I came home, there wasn't even a hot meal waiting. You wouldn't even cook for me." The moment he started listing those grievances, I shot Adam an exhausted look. Cheating was cruel, but what was even crueler was 2 people who had once loved each other tearing apart every detail of their relationship, desperately trying to decide who had been right and who had been wrong. Adam quietly picked up my suitcase and took my hand. "Let's go. We're going home. I'll cook for you." The words "we're going home" instantly silenced Zach. All the anger drained from him. Only defeat. and humiliation remained. Chapter 20. Less than a minute after we walked out, I heard the sound of Zach smashing things inside the apartment. Adam ruffled my hair. I've been so well behaved it's almost heartbreaking. Huh? I looked at him in confusion. I didn't hit him. I didn't insult him. I handled myself like a gentleman. Model boyfriend material. I couldn't help laughing. That evening, Adam really did cook dinner for me. Looking at the 4 dishes and soup neatly arranged on the marble dining table, I felt unexpectedly touched. Actually, Zach had been right about one thing. The failure of our relationship wasn't entirely his fault. I had my share of responsibility too. I was always thinking about the future, always compromising in the present. I thought about marriage, about children, about building a stable life. But somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten that people also crave novelty. That excitement keeps love alive. The time I'd spent with Adam had been so happy, precisely because everything between us felt fresh, unexpected, thrilling. Maybe love was simply love, not just another step toward a marriage certificate. What are you thinking about? Adam's voice suddenly pulled me back to reality. I blinked at him before smiling. I was thinking about you. His eyes immediately lit up. He sat down beside me, picked up his wine glass, and grinned. Come on, let's drink while you shower me with compliments. I clinked my glass against his and finished it in one gulp. Being in a relationship is kind of exhausting. Before I could finish, he interrupted. Then let me do the exhausting part. He was so impatient tonight. That was exactly what I'd been trying to say. Why wouldn't he let me finish? I poured myself another glass and emptied it again. What do you like about me? He took a sip of wine and studied me seriously. Fair skin, pretty face, tiny waist. But most importantly, you're not clingy. I'm always the one chasing after you. What kind of answer was that? Sighing, I poured myself several more glasses. Adam, let's make this official. And if you won't chase me anymore, I'll chase you. His eyes widened. You can actually be that forward? I waved a dismissive hand. Why not? It wasn't until 3 in the morning that we finally had time to lie down together and simply talk. Holding me in one arm while smoking with the other hand, Adam suddenly asked, if I didn't have these 8-pack abs, would you still want me? Resting my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, I laughed proudly. Then a practical concern crossed my mind. If we're together, there'll definitely be gossip. Does that bother you? His body stiffened slightly. I've been worried this whole time that you'd be afraid and end up dumping me. I propped myself up to look at him. I'm not afraid. Happiness always comes with a price. I'm willing to accept that. From now on, I didn't want to care what anyone else thought. I wanted to take responsibility for my own happiness, to live according to my own feelings, to enjoy love without regret, to face whatever life brought without fear, and never let gossip dictate my choices. Because you make me happy, and if I stop making you happy, then I'll dump you. There are plenty of men in the world. Adam laughed. Miriam, Zach really changed your whole outlook. I shook my head. No, you did. Adam always said he loved that I wasn't clingy, but the clingy one was definitely him. My job was already busy enough, yet he still waited downstairs outside my office every single day. On the very first day we got together, he made our relationship official on social media. 1 week later, he insisted on celebrating our 1-week anniversary. He really broadened my horizons. In my past relationships, I was always chasing forever, always terrified of letting the other person down. Love became unbearably heavy. Adam taught me a different way to love. When you're in love, love with everything you've got. As for everything else, time will give us the answers.